Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So here's another deck profile for all of you guys today. This time it's on Madolche's. It's actually a deck I haven't picked up in quite a long while. It's actually a really fun going second deck, especially because it can easily break your opponent's boards and OTK your opponent. But the problem with this deck is that it is actually pretty fragile to a lot of forms of disruption. So basically with the right hand trap, you can basically just shut this deck down, and yeah, it gets kind of tricky, which is why I decided to build around a strategy where I can kind of like combat these problems and still be able to, maintain a board and just, yeah, like add a lot of pressure to my opponent. Now, the one thing about Madolche is that they all also have a gimmick where if they're destroyed and sent to the graveyard, they get to shuffle themselves back to the deck. So they always kind of recycle themselves. So it's like, yeah, it's pretty crazy on how well this deck can actually perform. But I figured I'd show you guys what I got this time around. And yeah, let's go and get started. So as I mentioned in the post prior, I actually did build my deck in a way where I can kind of like deal with the current meta, and hopefully it works. So starting off with 3 copies of Madolche Madolche. This is one of your main starters. So basically when this card is normal or flip summon, you can add 1 Madolche monster from your deck to your hand. Next, 3 copies of Angeli. You can tribute this card and special summon 1 Madolche monster from your deck, and if you do, it cannot be destroyed by battle, but shuffle it into the deck during the end phase of your next turn. But you're never going to go into that part simply because the whole point of this deck is to Xyz summon or link off into Madolche fresh to start, just to kind of like get things rolling. But yeah, I like that Angeli is another good starter for the deck. Next, 3 copies of Madolche Petting Cesor. Now, this is one of the cards that actually locks you into using only Madolche monsters for the turn if you use her effect. But basically, if you have no monsters in your graveyard, you can just special summon this card from your hand. And that's one of the things about this deck. You don't want monsters in your graveyard because you really need to see Petting Cesor as early as possible. That way you can go full combo. But when you special summon her, I believe you get to raise her level by 1. Let's see. If this card is special summoned, you can special summon 1 monster from your hand or deck except Madolche Petting Cesor, and if you do, reduce its level by 1. Okay, so it's the one that gets that special summons off of her effect that has to reduce its level, not raise its level. My apologies. I haven't played this deck in quite a while, so I kind of forget a few things. But yeah, these 3 are definitely the ones you want to go into the most. So yeah. Moving on, 2 copies of Hootcake. Hootcake has the ability where you can banish monsters from your graveyard, just special summon 1 Madolche monster from your deck. And the one you're mostly going to go after is going to be this one. 2 copies of Messengerlato. If this card, or when this card is special summoned, you can add 1 Madolche spell or trap from your deck to your hand, but you have to control a Madolche beast monster, in which case Hootcake will be your beast target in order to resolve this effect. And last but not least, 1 copy of Madolche Pudding Sis. Probably the worst one of the bunch, but she does have her perks. The fact that she's a level 5 and you get to reduce her level to level 4. And also, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy that target. So it's pretty nice. And that pretty much rounds up the Madolche monsters themselves. Alright, I'm running 1 copy of Pankratops. It's just a powerful going second tool. It is an earth monster, which is pretty nice. And it's just a good way to deal with like floodgates such as Tikaboo or Skill Drain. So like you could just bait it out. 3 copies of Nibiru. Just because, again, I am going second, and I'm trying to play hand traps that don't really conflict with my strategy. So I feel like Nibiru is a good target. And plus, it's really good against prank kits. It is pretty strong against flunderies, but it's a little tricky. So you just, as long as they don't have a negate or the barrier statue out, Nibiru can come in clutch. Now, I am running 1 Veiler and 1 Ash Blossom. They can come up, but the main reason I'm playing this is because I am main decking Crossout Designator. And as I mentioned before, this deck does lose to a lot of forms of disruption. So like 1 hand trap is really all it takes to end my turn if I don't have a good follow-up. So I just want to make sure I can push for my place. But yeah, Nibiru, Veiler, and Ash, definitely good targets for Crossout Designator. I'm also running Impermanence, which we'll get to momentarily. So that's the whole purpose behind these. All right, moving on to spells already. I'm running 3 copies of Madolche Salon. This basically acts as a double summon for your Madolche monsters. And also have another Madolche cards you control or in your grave is added back to your hand or shuffled into your deck. You can set 1 Madolche spell or trap directly from your deck, except Madolche Salon. So it's a good way just to get access to some of your other Madolche spells or traps. Next, 1 Chateau, which if you activate this, you can just shuffle back every Madolche monster in your graveyard from your graveyard back to your deck. 1 Ticket. So when a Madolche card is returned to your side of the field, well, from your side of the field or your grave back to your hand or main deck. You can add one Madolche monster from your deck to your hand. So just a good way just to get more resources in hand. For added consistency, 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity. You can run Extravagance. The extra deck is kind of set up in a way where you can play it, but personally I like Prosperity because I want to dig 6 cards in deeper, just so I can get the cards I do need. So yeah, like there is an argument to say which one is better, but personally for me, I think Prosperity, for Madolches at least, is definitely the better pick. Next, 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. You know, I got to deal with back row because, again, Skill Drain is at 3 for whatever reason, and Eldritch is really out there. Like, in fact, almost everybody in my locals plays Eldritch, or at least some variant of it, so better just to be prepared, you know? Double Crossout Designator, as I mentioned, just to deal with certain hand traps, along with the Call by the Grave. I'm also running 3 copies of Imperm, which actually by itself is also a good target for Crossout Designator, because it's basically just Effect Veiler, but in a trap card. Next, 2 copies of Madolche Promenade. It's another form of negation. You can target one face-up monster, or one face-up card, your opponent controls, and one Madolche monster you control, or in your graveyard, negate the effects of that card, and then you get to bounce back that monster you chose back to your hand. So it's a good way just to recover your resources, but also negate. And this can also, you know, deal with any card, so as long as it's face-up, of course. And last but not least, I am main decking the 1 red reboot. I just want to keep trap decks on edge just to make sure, like, I can press on and just basically, like, just clear their boards. So, yeah, that's the whole reason behind red reboot. And the fact that you can activate it from hand as well is pretty nice. All right, so for the extra deck, sorry, I had to clear my throat there. 2 copies of Fresh Start and 1 Elsa, just, you know, as a bonus. But yeah, Fresh Start's pretty good because, you know, she has a built-in protection effect. 3 Madolche Teacher Glass Souffle. Basically, you detach 1 material from this card, target 1 Madolche monster on the field this turn. That face-up monster is unaffected by monster effects this turn, except by its own, of course. Next, probably the MVP of the deck is going to be Queen Tiramisu. She basically is, she recycles your resources when you detach a material, but you get to target up to the number of cards that you shuffle back, non-targeting. So I don't know why I said targeted the first time, but yeah, she basically is basically why you clear out boards so easily with this deck. And a lot of the Madolche cards are not hard once per turn, so that's also one of the things about this deck. It's so annoying. Next, 1 Madolche Pudding says Chocolate a la Mode. So this card has a weird description, so let me just give you the rundown here. So you can also exceed some of this card using any rank 4 or lower Madolche monster, which basically Glass Souffle and Tiramisu are rank 4s. And then, of course, once per turn, you can target 1 Madolche card in your graveyard, shuffle it into the deck. While this card has Madolche Pudding Cyst as material, when a Madolche card in your graveyard is shuffled back to the main deck, except during damage step, you can detach 1 material from this card, special summon 1 Madolche monster from your deck in attack position or face down defense. So, like, yeah, it's like, it gets a little garbled there, but yeah, basically she gives you access to more Madolche plays, so that way you can get access to more rank 4s, and then you can actually go into another one of these, and just, yeah, it gets really crazy afterwards. 1 Zeus, you know, it can't come up, but again, you gotta be careful with Pitting Scissor, since that one locks you into Madolche monsters. And of course, 1 Intis and 1 Omega, just to deal with Dogmatica players. And yeah, just kind of self-explanatory there. All right, now for my side deck, against Sword Souls, I'm playing 3 copies of Token Collector, because, you know, just gotta be careful with those. 2 Godarla, this is primarily for Floowandereeze, because they're probably the only deck that can still turbo out the Barrier Statue of the Winds. And yeah, Godarla is just a good counter to that. Another good counter would be Dark Ruler No More, but this is just for any deck that pumps out like multiple negations, like Dragon Link is still out there. And of course, Sword Soul also pumps out multiple negates, so Dark Ruler No More is definitely one of those cards that can help with that. I'm also running a 3rd Crossout Designator on the side, 1 Harpy's Feather Duster, 3 Solemn Judgment. These are primarily if I'm forced to go first, because my deck doesn't really like to go first at all. So I just kind of want to be, want to be prepared, basically. And 1 Ice Dragon's Prison. This is actually a pretty good a good counter to Destiny Hero Destroy Phoenix Enforcer, and the occasional Dragoon. I don't see it as often anymore, but you never know. But yeah, well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and I will catch you guys again next time.